Sam, and I'm back with our monthly AMA, and today's a special one. Let me make sure I'm live on Instagram here as well. But today's a special one. So we are, it's interesting. So since we last um, did this AMA a month ago, we've now seen the first application officially open up for summer 2024. Okay. And it's basically from RBC Capital Markets, which, is not surprising because for those of you that are very experienced with the recruiting process, you'll know that RBC usually is the first major investment bank to start the application process every single year. Okay. First major. So that's not surprising, but for those of you who are sophomores, like class of 2025, which means you're either graduating in May of 2025, or if you're graduating in December of 2024, same thing. Like either way, if you're one of those two graduation dates, then you're considered to be the class of 2025 for recruiting purposes. If that's you, then you need to start preparing like right now, right? Because usually by the time summer 2024, by the time RBC opens applications, that means that the rest of the major banks, namely elite boutiques and bulge bracket banks, they're probably just about 2 months away. Usually 2 to 3 months away, but usually 2 months away. Okay. So that's what we're going to be primarily talking about today. But obviously, like if you're a sophomore and if you have questions about summer 2024 recruiting, feel free to drop them down below in the comments. Whether it's on LinkedIn, if you're on my LinkedIn profile right now, or if you are on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, if you are on Facebook inside of our Facebook group, or if you are on Instagram, on our Instagram page, and any of those places, you can go ahead and whatever questions you have, drop it down in the comments. And, I'm going to, for the next hour or so, go through as many of these questions as possible and just make sure to give you guys as much value as I can. Okay. Now, while I'm waiting for you guys to do that, hopefully you guys can all hear me, by the way. I got this new mic and, I'm testing it out, but if you guys can hear me, drop like a hashtag live down in the comments so I know you can hear me. If you are watching this later during the replay, drop a hashtag replay. Help us get some engagement going so that more people can see this video, more people can get value from this, and that'll just help everybody out. All right. So while I'm waiting for you guys to drop your actual questions down below in the comment section, and while we're waiting for kind of the queue of questions to build up, I'm just gonna kind of tell you guys a little bit about me and a little bit about what Wall Street Mastermind is. For those of you that are new or not familiar with us, just so you know kind of why you should even listen to me, right? And so just to give a little bit quick intro about me, I used to be an investment banker. My name is Sam Shaw. I'm founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Used to be an investment banker, worked at both Deutsche Bank in their technology investment banking group, as well as Morgan Stanley in their technology investment banking group, which is one of the best groups on all of Wall Street, actually, when it comes to investment banking. Definitely one of the best groups in technology investment banking. It's up there along with, they regularly compete with Goldman TMT, right? Which is, probably widely considered by most to be the best group. So anyway, that's kind of me. And then after that, I worked in private equity as well. And so I, in total worked on Wall Street for over 5 years. And then after that, I worked for a couple different technology startups, including Square, which is now called Block. But joined Square back when they were just a $3 billion company. And obviously now they're probably at least 10x that. At one point they were 20x that, but obviously a lot of stocks have been dropping. Also then later joined GitHub when they were only worth about $750 million. And that was when they were a Series A company. And then, I was the first finance hire by the CFO there. And then we helped scale that company to eventually an exit where they got acquired by Microsoft and for $7.5 billion. And so that was a really, really great outcome as well. And yeah, between those two, and like, shortly after that, I basically started Wall Street Mastermind. So, I've had a bit of experience in, banking, private equity, tech startups, and then also, now having started my own business. And then like more importantly for you, in terms of Wall Street Mastermind, what we do, like we're the first and one of the only companies to actually provide students like you with active one-on-one hands-on coaching from investment bankers, people that have worked in investment banking and worked in private equity. A lot of our coaches currently work in investment banking and private equity still. And basically, we provide unlimited support on demand. Like you literally, I mean, there's a program that you would go through to teach you everything you need to know to be fully prepped for investment banking recruiting. But more importantly, what's different from us and everyone else is that anytime you have a question about anything, like you have like direct access to the coaches. Like it's almost like you have them on speed dial. You can like text them, message them anytime you need. Like we can meet with you. We can help you with like pretty much whatever you need from an investment banking recruiting standpoint. So like that is a huge competitive advantage. And because of that, our students have been able to basically successfully place into all the top banks in the world, like all the bulge bracket and elite boutique banks, as well as doing so with an over 90% success rate, right, over the last several years. And so that's, honestly pretty phenomenal and pretty amazing. It's very, very hard to do. But the reason why we've been able to do that is because we've done this so many times, like almost 700 times at this point. And we just know the recruiting process inside out. So it just makes the entire process a lot more stressful and a lot less overwhelming for the students that are going through it. Okay, so that's pretty much what we do. So, I'm going to spend the next hour or so kind of like diving into how the recruiting process works and answering just whatever questions you guys have. So, if you guys want to know anything about how you can get these jobs, like don't hesitate to just, again, drop your questions down below. Like we do these coaching calls and these Q&A calls with our clients probably twice a week. And so we meet with them very frequently. Obviously, we're very busy helping our existing clients. And so we can't do this all the time with people that are not in the program. But once a month, at the beginning of the month, we do this for everybody for free, like even people that are not in the program. And so that's what this call is. So like take advantage of this like while we're here for the next hour or so. I will try to do my best to answer as many questions as I can. And then, hopefully this helps you guys out. All right. And so with that said, just to give you guys a little bit of context about kind of like what I've been talking about, which is, you guys probably saw in the messages I sent out too. RBC Capital Markets has actually already opened their application. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen here. I can't share my screen on Instagram, so sorry for the folks on Instagram, but if you're on Zoom, if you're on our YouTube channel, you should be able to see my screen, which is the 2024 Global Investment Banking Summary Analyst application for RBC has already opened. The application deadline is March 2nd of next year. So, that's still a while out, but like, if we scroll down, you can see down here, they actually posted this application on September 22nd. Okay. So this is not like me scaring you guys or whatever. Like literally you can go on RBC's career website and you can see the application. It's already open. You can start applying, not just for New York, but they have separate applications for, all the different offices, Houston, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York. All right. So like all the major offices basically. And so what does this mean for you? Right? Basically, once RBC opens up, in the past several years, what we've seen is that the elite, most, if not all the elite boutiques will follow shortly thereafter. And then like some of the bulge bracket banks will also start right around the same time as the elite boutiques. So like if you want to work for firms like, Evercore, Centerview, Lazard, Moelis, PJT, those are like the elite boutiques of the world, right? And then like for the bulge bracket banks, like typically the ones that we've seen that tend to open a little bit earlier, like Citi is definitely one of the ones that opens really early. And then I'm trying to think what else. I think Bank of America might be one. Like Goldman and JP typically open a little bit later. I think Morgan Stanley might be on the earlier side as well. And like different offices also recruit at different times, right? So like if it's the technology group for Morgan Stanley, for example, I know because that's my alma mater, but like they typically recruit earlier than the New York office. So like depending on where you want to recruit for, you're also going to want to kind of like keep track of the timeline and pay close attention. And like one of the only ways to like really know when a lot of these firms are going to open are one, looking at when they open in past years. And it's not always going to be the same every single year. In fact, most of the time they move it up a little bit earlier every single year, but it gives you a rough proxy or indication of, okay, they opened around this time last year. So that means they'll probably open around the same time this year, right? Now, that's not always the case because, for example, 2 years ago and also 3 years ago, like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, they both pushed back their application date, JP Morgan to June 1st after sophomore year, and then Goldman Sachs to July 1st after sophomore year, because they basically said, hey, we're not going to play this game of like just moving it up earlier and earlier every year. It sucks for the students, and like it's just not healthy for anyone. And so like they try to do the right thing by pushing it back. They did that for 2 or 3 years, and then last year they kind of capitulated because they found out that none of the other banks, none of their competitors followed, right? And so everyone else pretty much just continues to recruit earlier and earlier. And then what JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs ended up happening is like they felt like they were missing out on some of the best candidates, right? And so last year they kind of like moved everything back up. And so I think like JP Morgan, or for the class of 2025 class of 2024, that had to recruit for summer 2023 internships. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, I think, started recruiting in like, I want to say like February and April instead of like June and July, right? So they pulled their timeline. So like the point is this is all fluid and nobody knows for sure what's going to happen this year in terms of like when these firms are going to open up. And so like you have to stay on top of it, but more so than that, like rather than trying to guess when all these applications are going to open, it's best to just like be prepared as soon as possible. Like start preparing now if you haven't already done so. Okay, so that's the first thing that I want to kind of impress upon you guys. June Wang, sorry if I'm butchering your name, on YouTube also said that it looks like, actually, was that on YouTube? Or maybe that was on LinkedIn. Sorry, it was on LinkedIn. So June Yang said that Rothschild also opened their summer 2024 application. So actually, it's not even just RBC. Rothschild is considered probably like a lower tiered elite boutique, and they've actually also opened their application as well. So that's 2 banks that have already opened. And so like now is really the time to start paying attention. Okay. Now, again, if you guys have questions, start dropping them down below in the comments, because, we want to kind of build up the queue a little bit before I start going through and answering these questions. And so I see a couple questions maybe on Instagram right now. So, I'm going to get to that in a second. But, if you're on YouTube or if you're on LinkedIn and you have questions, make sure you drop your questions down below in the comments. Okay. So I'll get to that in a second, but timeline is the first thing to be aware of. That's always like the most important thing when it comes to recruiting, because you need to know how much time do you have to work with. And then from there, you can work backwards to figure out how much do I still need to do. And based on that, like you can map out a game plan for like just how much you need to get done each month. And you can break that down further into each week, and then you break that down further into like each day, right? Now, what are the things that you need to do for you to become a competitive candidate for summer 2024? Well, I would say there's like 4 major areas that you need to focus on. Okay. The first one is your resume, right? So obviously like some of the things on your resume are like somewhat set in stone. It's not going to change overnight. So like things like where you go to school, that's a big part of your resume, right? Target school, non-target school, but that's typically not going to change, like unless you transfer schools, which, most of the time I don't recommend doing that. And so like your school is kind of set in stone. It is what it is. Your GPA, that can obviously still improve, but like typically that only changes once per semester. So like if you just start a new semester, your GPA is not going to go up until the end of the semester. Now you should obviously try to do your best to get the best grades possible, but that's also like, that's just like, the basics, like what you have to do as a student, right? Like, so we're not going to talk too much about that today. The rest of your resume is about your work experience and your extracurricular activities, like your leadership activities, right? And so like here, you want to make sure that you have enough relevant experience. Like on the internship side, ideally, by the time you start applying, you want to try to have at least 2, if not 3 relevant internships on your resume. Okay. And so like by relevant, what we mean is like you have, obviously like if you have an investment banking internship on your resume, even if it's from a smaller bank, that's highly relevant, right? If you worked in like private equity at any scale, it could be like, a big, obviously the bigger the fund, the better, but at a minimum, even if it's a very small private equity firm or even a search fund, that can be highly relevant because you're still doing like M&A work. And then like if you're doing even other things like equity research, valuation, that can be highly relevant. Corporate development, which is like if you're doing M&A in-house for an actual company or corporation, that can be very relevant. What else? You can do, I mean, some people do like, asset management or private wealth management. Like that can be somewhat relevant, but I would say like definitely less so, right? But like at a minimum, it's just something that's finance related. But even within finance, my point is like you can get a lot more granular and there's still more relevant finance internships and less relevant finance internships. Okay. And so like the more relevant, the better. And then ideally you have more than just one, right? I mean, minimum of one. If you have zero, like you have basically almost no chance. If you have at least one internship, then you at least have something to point to when you're applying for these jobs, when you're networking with people, you have something to talk about in the interviews. But ideally 2 to 3, I think is like the sweet spot. Okay. And then like extracurricular activities, like obviously try to join the relevant student orgs on campus, right? Try to join like your investment funds, your investment banking clubs, so on and so forth. Even better yet, if you can take on leadership positions in those clubs, that will also give you more things to talk about in your interviews and more things to write about on your resume, right? So like that's a resume, okay? That's part one. Second thing is like your networking, right? So like don't be disillusioned into thinking that, hey, if you just have a good resume, then that's all you need and you can apply for these jobs and you can get these interviews. Like the truth is like there's so many qualified candidates out there that are applying for these jobs. A lot of them go to great schools, have great GPAs, of multiple internships. They have leadership activities. Like they check all the boxes, right? So like even if you have that too, or if you only have like check 3 out of the 4 boxes and someone else checks all 4, like you cannot expect to just like solely rely on your resume to get these jobs. And so like for the vast majority of people, even the people that are super qualified, like you're going to have to network with people to network with the bankers that are at these firms. And the goal of networking, by the way, is not just like having this casual, pleasant conversation, asking them a bunch of questions and asking them what it's like to work in investment banking and blah, 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 blah. Like your goal when it comes to networking is like, you got to get the referral from the person. You want to get them to like you enough and be impressed by you enough to be willing to go out of their way and say, hey, yeah, I'm going to refer you. I'm going to like help you get your interview. Like that's what you're looking for. You want that explicit, confirmation from them that they're going to be willing to help you get the interview. Doesn't mean like you're guaranteed to get the interview, but like at least they're going to try to help you. But like also not all referrals are created equal on that point. Like if you get a referral from like a managing director versus if you get a referral from like an analyst, obviously there's different weight behind that, right? Like a managing director, if they really want to get you an interview, they could probably single-handedly get you an interview, right? If an analyst puts in a good word for you, maybe that gets you an interview, maybe that doesn't, right? And so like that's something to keep in mind as well. So that's number 2. So the first 2 things we talked about so far, both in terms of the resume and in terms of the networking, like those are the only 2 things that matter when it comes to determining whether you actually get selected for the interview or not. Okay, so that's like the first big hurdle that you're gonna have to overcome, right? Then like the second big hurdle is like, okay, now if you can get the interview, you're gonna have to be able to pass the interview, right? And it's like passing the interview, same thing. We can kind of like break that down in 2 parts. There's the behavioral interview and then there's the technical interview. Okay, so like everyone always wants to like talk about the technical interview first or like worry about the technical interview. I'm gonna tell you a secret right now. Most people don't realize this. The behavioral interview is actually a lot more important than the technical interview. Okay. Now, reason why that is because most of the candidates that are qualified, like your real competition, not like the unqualified candidates, but like the people that are really, truly ultimately going to make it to the super day and are going to be under consideration for these offers, like most, if not all of them, are going to know their technical questions. So yes, you still need to know the technicals because if you don't, that's just like table stakes. Like if you don't and other people do, like you'll be eliminated right away. But even if you just know your technicals, like that just gives you a seat at the table. Like to use a poker analogy that allows you to like buy in and play the game. It doesn't mean that you're actually going to win the game, right? And so like to actually win the game, you have to outplay your opponents. Like you have to actually have some way of separating yourself from the rest of the pack. You have to have some way of making yourself stand out. And that's where the behavioral answers come in, because with the technical answers, like everyone is either going to have the right answer or the wrong answer. In fact, like if they ask everyone the same questions, like most of the people will have the same answers because they all know the right answers. So that's not going to like separate you. What's really going to separate you is like if your behavioral answers actually are unique, They're not cookie cutter. They're not just like straight out of the interview guys. You're not saying the same things that everyone else is saying. And your story is actually more compelling, and you're more memorable, and you get the banker to like just like you more as a person. Okay. That's where you can actually really have a lot of variance and really separate yourself from the pack. So like we've worked with so many students at this point. We see time and time again, students that get offers, even though they weren't perfect on their technical interviews. Maybe they mess up on 1 or 2 questions and they get the majority of it, but they still get offers because their stories were so good on the behavioral side. Versus we also see students that like nail the entire technical interview and they answer every single question correctly, but they still don't get offers because their stories weren't that great, right? And so like, that's just like, like the honest truth. And like a lot of people won't tell you this, but like, honestly, like if you go ask investment bankers the same question too, like, hey, what's more important, behaviorals or technicals? Like you'll be surprised. A lot of them will actually confirm what I'm saying, which is like, they'll tell you that actually like the behaviorals are more important. So like the truth of the matter is like most people over-index on studying for their technicals and they under-index on how much they prep for the behaviorals. Most people's mentality and attitude is like, oh, well, behavioral interviews are easy. Just talking about myself, right? Like I know how to do that. Like I can do that all day. I don't need to put too much thought into it. Like in reality, like it's not that simple. Okay. Like if I say, hey, tell me about yourself, like you probably have some answer prepared for that question, right? But like, how good is your answer actually? Like you probably, a lot of people say, oh, I think it's pretty good. Right? It's like, okay, but like, how good is your answer relative to your competition's answers? Like, do you know what your competition is saying for this exact same question? And most of you are going to say, no, you don't know, right? And if you don't know what your competition is saying, then you can't possibly know if your answer is actually good or not, because you're being graded on a curve. When I say an answer is good, it's like, is it better or worse than your competition's answers? That's the criteria, right? It's not like a technical question where it's like binary, where it's like you either get the right answer or you don't. There's no such thing on the behavioral side. It's just like, is your story more compelling, more interesting, better, more unique than your competition's answer? So like, that's where most people made the mistake of assuming like, yeah, I think my answer is pretty good already. And then in reality, they don't really know, right? So that's behaviorals. And on the technical side, obviously, you still need to know your technicals. Like, I'm not trying to say that technicals are not important, but I think like everyone already knows that the technicals are important. But the problem is like most people, when they prepare for the technical questions, they don't do it in a way that's effective or efficient, right? So like the two most popular ways for people to prepare for technical questions is like, one, people will get one of the popular interview guys, will get it handed down from an upperclassman or something. It's like, hey, just study this and you'll be great. Like, yes, those guys are great, but like if you use them the right way, right? Like what you should not do is take those guides and then just like 400 questions, guy. Let me memorize the answers to these 400 questions, and then just hope that I'm going to get the exact same questions during these interviews. Because I guarantee you right now, you walk into that interview, your interviewer is not going to ask you just like the exact same questions that you've already memorized, because all the interviewers know that you're reading those same guys. Like there's only 2 or 3 guys out there that everybody's reading. It's like 400 questions guide. There's Wall Street Oasis guide. There's a newer guy called like the Wall Street Prep Red Book. And like pretty much that's it, right? And so like everyone's reading the same guys. Your interviews have read those guys too. They read the same guys when they came up and when they were prepping. And like they know the exact questions that are in those guides. And if anything, interviewers now are going out of their way to deliberately not ask the questions from those guys, because they want to see not just like, oh, who can memorize these answers the best and just regurgitate it. Like even a monkey could do that, right? Like what they want to see is like who actually understands these concepts. So what they're doing now is they're asking variations of these questions. In fact, they're asking like a lot more like open-ended questions that cannot be memorized. Like you cannot actually memorize the answers ahead of time. You have to be able to think on your feet and apply the knowledge that you've already learned to like real world situations. Like that's what we're seeing a lot of. And how do I know that? Because what we do inside of our program is actually a lot of our students, when they go and actually like interview, they will come back and they will actually send us, or not send us, they'll submit into a centralized database all the questions that they got in the actual interviews, right? And so like, that's like a super powerful thing, right? So I'll actually show you what that looks like. Where's our interview questions database? So I'm gonna share my screen. So this is like our Slack channel, right? And so you'll see that this is like a channel where like people are actually like sending in their interview questions that they got through like real interviews. And so like this is like a Morgan Stanley Singapore interview. This is like a Vista Equity Partners interview. And by the way, like one of our clients actually just got an offer from Vista Equity Partners, which is like this huge private equity firm. So like that is, it's a mega fund. It's one of the best software private equity firms out there. So he's getting an offer from them as an undergrad, super sick offer. Here's like an offer from, an interview from Ernst & Young for their investment banking team. Here's an interview from Rabobank. Here's an interview from DC Advisory, San Francisco office. So like, my point of showing you this is that our students are actually like submitting the actual questions that these banks are asking into a centralized database. And so like we actually see in real time what questions these banks are asking, which is how we know that these questions are not the same questions as the questions that are in those guides, right? Like it's getting harder. These interviews are getting harder. And like, also like, because our students are like have access to the centralized database and they're all helping each other out, they actually know before they go into the actual interview what questions to expect. Like pretty much like all the big reputable banks are in this database. Like we've got like hundreds and hundreds of entries, thousands of questions in total. And so like those are the questions that they're actually practicing with, like real questions from these interviews, not like, the questions from the guides that everyone else is trying to memorize, right? And so like that's one thing to keep in mind, is just like don't memorize the questions in the guides because it's not effective, right? You have to truly understand the underlying concepts so that you can like apply that knowledge no matter what variation they throw at you and what questions they like. Even if you've never seen a question before in your life, you need to be able to answer it. Okay. And also to test for like whether you actually like truly know this stuff well enough is, can you actually teach this stuff? Like, can you explain this stuff to your brother who's like in who's in like 6th grade, 12 years old, right? Like if you can explain this to like a total, newbie beginner in layman terms, then you know it well enough for the interviews, right? Because like that's literally pretty much what they're going to be asking you to do in an interview setting. Okay. The last thing I will say about technical interviews is like a lot of you probably spend a lot of time going through like financial modeling courses. Like financial modeling is great. Don't get me wrong. Like that's a skill that you're going to need once you're on the job, but that's not the skill that you need to actually get the job. I can guarantee you right now, none of the interviews that you go through, especially if it's at a reputable bank, whether it's bulge bracket, elite boutique, or middle market, none of those banks are actually going to ask you to build a financial model in your interview. There is no financial modeling test during the interview. Okay. Like I repeat, there is no financial modeling test during the interview. They will not put a laptop in front of you with a blank Excel spreadsheet and ask you to build like a discounted cash flow on the spot or a leverage buyout model on the spot. Like they just don't do that. Right. And so like, instead, what they want you to do is like be able to, again, verbally explain these concepts. And so that's the skill that you need to learn. And that's the skill you need to be practicing. Like learning how to verbally explain these concepts is different from learning how to like link things up in a spreadsheet and like learn all the different Excel functions. And like, oh, if I change this cell, like how does that change all the other cells? Like you don't need to know that. And it's not a good use of time. Okay. It is a good use of time after you've gotten the offer before you start the job. If you want to take a financial modeling course, then, hey, be my guest. Right. But you got to focus on the right things because there's a very limited amount of time that you have before the summer 2024 process actually starts. Okay. So anyway, those are the only 4 things that matter. Just to recap, it's your resume, it's your networking, it's your behavioral interview skills, it's your technical interview skills. The first 2 are going to help you get the interview, right? And then the last 2 are going to help you pass the interviews. If you get enough interviews and you're good enough at interviewing, you should be able to pass at least 1 interview from beginning to end, first round, high review, first round, super day. And that's all it takes to get the offer. Okay. So like, hopefully that's like simple enough. Right. And so that's like the high level overview I want to give you guys in terms of what you need to do and what you should be focused on over the next 2 to 3 months or so before more applications open up and start kicking off. Okay. So now with that said, I know there's some questions in the queue, so I'm going to go and start answering some of these questions. And again, for those of you that just joined, if you have questions about whether it's summer 2024 recruiting or just like investment banking recruiting in general, make sure you drop your questions down below in the comment section, whether you're on LinkedIn, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Instagram, wherever you are, drop the questions down below. And I'm going to do my best to go through and answer as many of them as I can in the next 30 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to start over here from Instagram just because I think we have the most questions here. And so first question was from Cam BDV. Hey, I'm currently on real estate side at Wells Fargo. How hard is it to transition for IB? Yeah, man. So it depends on like what you mean by the real estate side. Like, what are you doing? Like, is it like real estate private equity? Which I don't think Wells Fargo has that, right? So I'm not sure like, or what does that mean? Like, is real estate like hey, I'm like a loan officer on a mortgage lending side. I mean, in which case, like, that's not very relevant at all, right? Like, if you're doing like real estate private equity or real estate investing or something like that, then I think that certainly is like, like private equity is very close to investment banking. So like that is highly relevant and it should be like very easy to make that type of transition, right? But if it's something else, like, I mean, if you can be more specific, I can give you like better input, but like the more relevant your job is, the easier it is to kind of like make that pivot. But we've helped people, young professionals that are already working lateral into investment banking from other finance fields that are like not particularly investment banking, but like just somewhat tangential, right? Like we help people lateral in from accounting, from audit, from valuation, like very small valuation firms, from equity research, from sales and trading, from corporate banking, from corporate development, even from asset management. Like from FP&A, even like, so like anything that's even like somewhat remotely related, I would say like it's still within the realm of possibility. Okay. Now, obviously it's like case by case, but I would say like, it's definitely possible. Okay. If you want to know like whether it's possible for your specific situation, this is for any of you that are on this call, feel free to like reach out and book a call with our team. You can do that by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST. So it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And we can like just learn more about your specific situation and then like give you better and more tailored advice on whether something is possible or not based on your specific situation. Okay. And the call is completely free. Let me go to the next question. Classy Oz, that's great value. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Let's see what else. Classy Oz says, what's more important, resume or cover letter? Absolutely the resume, man. Like cover letter is like not very important at all. Like, so a lot of people don't realize this, but like, especially if you're applying for a big firm, like the cover letter is almost like nobody ever reads it. They get so many applications. They get like thousands, if not like, I mean, not even thousands. Like a lot of these big firms, they get like tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of applicants, right? Like Goldman Sachs, I think like even like a year or two ago, like they got, I want to say like 236,000 applications for their internships, right? And so like, they're just not going to like read your cover letter because they don't have time to do that. Okay. And so like most people like, they're just looking at the resume and that's really the thing that matters. And so you want to make sure your resume is really good. Like you're going to use that for everything. You use your resume for networking. You use your resume for the application itself. And a cover letter is like kind of check the box type of thing. A lot of firms don't even require one anymore. A lot of them have made it optional, or some of them just don't ask for it at all, right? Now, if you're applying for like a smaller firm, cover letter might be a little bit more important, but still not as important as a resume. Like people might read it because they're not getting as many applications, but like it's very, very hard to like have a cover letter that's so great that they'll like decide that they want to hire you just because of the cover letter, right? And also like it's very hard to have a cover letter that's so bad that they're just like, oh, I just don't want to hire you because your cover letter sucks. I mean, like the latter is easier than the former, but like either way, like I don't think it's a big needle mover. Okay, so like definitely focus on building up your resume more, but hopefully that makes sense. Your LinkedIn profile too, like I will lump your LinkedIn profile in with your resume as well. Like those two are kind of like one and the same. Like your LinkedIn profile is kind of like your online version, your digital version of your resume. And a lot of times, like you reach out to bankers before they decide whether they want to respond or not and whether they even want to talk to you, they're going to go and look you up on LinkedIn to see like if you're someone that's interesting or qualified enough, because like nobody, like they're really busy and most people don't want to spend time talking to someone that's like not that qualified, right? Like nothing personal, just like they don't want to waste your time. Okay. So let me go to the next question. Steven Isai asks, gosh, what do we do to finalize for 2023 internships? Yeah, man. So it is kind of crazy. Right? Like, don't get me wrong. So like most firms have not started recruiting for summer 2024. We're just saying like aside from RBC and it sounds like Rothschild, which is open up, most of the firms, we don't expect them to open for at least another 2 or 3 months. With that said, like the summer 2023 internship that process is starting to wind down, right? And so like all the elite boutique and bulge bracket banks are pretty much done recruiting for summer 2023. There's still middle market banks that are recruiting for summer 2023. So like if you're still recruiting, those are the firms that I would be prioritizing right now. Those are the firms that I would like, like that's like basically the best of what's left, right? And then like aside from that, I mean, like if you keep recruiting and like I would expect most of the middle market banks to be done like also over like the next 2 or 3 months or so. Like at that point, like most of those big firms are going to like turn the page and start recruiting for summer 2024, right? So then at that point, like by the end of the semester, if you still haven't secured a summer 2023 internship and you're a junior, going into your second semester junior year, now you're most likely going to be looking at regional boutique banks. Okay. And so like, basically like the goal is just like get the offer as quickly as you can. And like the sooner you get the offer, typically the better the offer is going to be. Now, if you getting any offer is better than getting no offer, right? And like, if you get an offer that you're not like 100% satisfied with for your summer internship, that's fine. Then like still just do the internship, get some experience under your belt, do a good job over the summer, get a return offer. And then like, you can always recruit again for full-time at the end of your internship. I mean, you'll probably have to like start making moves before that in terms of networking and things like that. But like the interviews themselves for full-time won't happen until after your summer internship is over, which is probably going to be like around August, right before your senior year starts. Okay. So like we've also helped a lot of students that come to us where like, you know, they had a summer internship or maybe they didn't get a summer internship and they, or they got a summer internship in banking and like, it wasn't like at like a bank that they were completely satisfied with. And then like we help them recruit for full-time up to a bigger and better bank, right? Like go up from a regional boutique to a bulge backer or elite boutique bank, or from a middle market bank to a bulge backer or elite boutique bank. Okay. So like that is possible. I will say though, just like in full transparency, if you do have to recruit for full-time, it is going to be a lot harder. That's why we always highly recommend if you can get in through the summer internship, you want to try to get in through the summer internship, right? Because for full-time, what you have to understand is that there's a lot more jobs during the summer internship process. When firms recruit for summer internships, they're starting with a clean slate. Like every single opening is still available, right? And they're starting from zero. And when you recruit for full-time, most of the offers have already been given to summer interns, right? Like the whole point of summer internship is they want you to try out for the job. And if you do a good job, they'll give you a return offer. So like they're going to first see which of their summer interns did a good job over the summer for the 9 to 10 weeks. And if they really like them, they're going to give them an offer to come back. And then at that point, if there's not enough good interns that are coming back, whether it's because there's not enough good interns in the first place, which is unlikely, or because they gave out, you know, enough offers, but not everyone took them. Maybe some interns want to go to like bigger and better banks. Then they're going to try to fill those last few spots available. But usually it's going to be no more than 10 to 20% of the spots, depending on market conditions. Like this year, for the current seniors that just went through full-time recruiting, because the summer 2022 class, they overhired, right? And like market conditions deteriorated. Like right now, the market's a lot worse than like 1 or 2 years ago when they first recruited the summer 2022 class. And so like, they didn't even have enough offers to give to all the interns that they liked, right? And then so like, naturally, there's a lot less spots left over for full-time recruiting. And so like full-time recruiting this year was really, really tough for people that had to do that. So like, if you can at all avoid it, you want to try to avoid it. You want to try to get into the summer internship. That's always going to be the safest bet, the best bet. But just saying like worst case scenario, if you don't get in at all for a summer internship, or if you do get in, but it's not at your top choice bank, you do have that second shot to like try again, but it just won't be like your best shot. It's not the optimal situation, basically. Okay. Hopefully that helps, Steven. Let me keep going. See if there's other questions on Instagram. Peace, guys. Any advice for someone in private wealth management at Merrill Lynch to move to IB? Does having securities license help? Peace, are you like interning in private wealth, or are you there for full time? Like, if you're interning, then you know I would just recruit for full time, like I just talked about. But if you're there for full time already, I mean, then you have to lateral, right? Like I think it can be done, like you know, but lateraling is kind of like full time. It's really ad hoc. You have to be very opportunistic. Firms pretty much typically only hire lateral candidates like if there's like a sudden opening that opened up, like somebody quit unexpectedly and they had to backfill them or something like that. But like usually even now, if the economy's bad and someone quits, like sometimes they might choose not to backfill them, right? But like the point is this, like usually when there's a lateral position, you don't know when it's going to happen. You just have to be ready. You have to be ready so you can be opportunistic. Like if you're not ready and an opening opens up and then like you're just going to miss it, right? Because like usually the lateral opportunities, there's only one job that they're trying to fill at a time. And so like the job might not be open for that long and they can fill it like just like that in a blink of an eye, right? And so like, but you know, it's the same 4 things that you need. You need to have a good resume. You need to be good at networking. Usually you have to like network your way into these opportunities. Also, a lot of lateral opportunities are not posted online. Like you have to like know somebody, right? Like when I lateral from Deutsche Bank to Morgan Stanley Tech, like that job was not posted. I had a friend in the group, not even a friend, an acquaintance, and he reached out and asked me if I was interested, and that's how I learned about it. And the entire process from beginning to end was like a week. From the time they reached out to me from the time to the time I got an offer was like a week. So most people like just never even knew that happened. Okay, so resume, networking, and then behaviorals and technicals. And for your behaviorals, it's really, really important to have a good explanation for why you want to switch from private wealth to investment banking, and like why you didn't just like basically like go for banking in the first place, right? And you can't say, oh, it's because I didn't get into banking, so I decided to like, settle for private wealth instead. Like that's not a good answer, right? So you have to like really think about how you're going to do that. Okay. But yeah, like I said, we've helped a lot of people that have lateral from other tangential fields, which private wealth I would consider to be one of those. So like if you want to help lateral into banking, like reach out to us, book a call with us, let's talk, and we'll see if we can help you. And if we can't help you, we'll just tell you, right? If we can, we'll definitely happy to discuss that as well. All right. So www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. Streets abbreviated to ST. wallstmastermind.com/apply. LT Hot Train 0209 asks, is it possible to find full-time if I already missed a summer intern? Yeah, it is. Like I said earlier, like, you can always recruit for full-time. There's a lot of factors that go into that though. Also like depends on if you are an international student or not. Like if you're an international student, like it's a lot harder because you have to like find firms that actually sponsor, and like most of the firms that sponsor are the bigger firms, and the bigger firms typically recruit earlier. Like by this point, like early October, like most of the big firms that actually sponsor for full-time, they're probably done hiring the classes already. So like at this point, you can still get in for full-time, but like usually it's going to be like with smaller firms. And so that might be fine if you're a citizen and you don't need sponsorship, but if you're international, like it might be a bit tougher, right? If you're international, like there are other ways to work around it. Like you might have to like delay graduation or get a master's degree, master's in finance or something like that. Something like do like a 1.5 year or 2 year program to push your graduation back to at least like as of today, you want to be pushed back to at least a December 2024 graduation date, which then would allow you to be eligible to recruit for summer 2024, which basically just like extends the runway for you and buys you a lot of time, right? And so like we've actually compiled a list of master's in finance programs that are at least 1.5 years, which will allow people like you to do that if you are an international student. So if you do need access to that, like feel free to reach out to us and let us know, and we're happy to share that with you. Okay. Let me see what else. Julian GS27. What should I do as a freshman that is looking for an internship? Is it realistic to try this year, or is it better to wait for next year? No, like Julian, you absolutely want to try this year because, like I said earlier, I'm not sure when you join, but like nowadays, if you want to be a competitive candidate, like by the time you have to recruit for your junior summer internship, which we've already established, that's like basically as early as like the beginning of sophomore year, or sometimes like halfway through sophomore year, right? First part of sophomore year, like by then, which is when all the applications open up, you want to try and have 2 to 3 relevant internships on your resume already. So if you think about that, if you, even like, let's say like first semester freshman, you don't do anything, you're getting settled on campus, you're joining school clubs, organizations, getting a lay of the land, getting adjusted to college, maintaining your grades, fine. Then like you do an internship your second semester freshman year, then you do one more internship your summer freshman year, and then you do another internship first semester sophomore year. That's 3 internships right there, right? Like that's basically like doing one every semester, including the summer, right? And the only one you skipped was like first semester. So like it's a very tight schedule, right? So like I would absolutely start now. But a lot of freshmen, what they struggle with is like, hey, like I don't have any relevant experience. My resume isn't that great. And so like it's hard for me to get relevant experience because nobody will hire me when I apply for these jobs, right? And so like there's this chicken and the egg problem. Like, well, if I can't get these jobs, how am I supposed to get relevant experience? But if I don't have relevant experience, no one will hire me. So like, what am I supposed to do, right? And so, if you need help with that, like we've basically figured out a way to like help people who have no prior experience get their first relevant, highly relevant finance internship, usually within just like 1 or 2 weeks. Like depending on how quickly you're really on top of it, 1 to 2 weeks. If it takes you a little bit longer, 2 to 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, but like definitely within the first month, you should be able to get a highly relevant internship for yourself. Okay. And so like, and the internship is most likely going to be unpaid because you don't have experience, but it's going to be highly relevant. You're going to be working at like either a small private equity firm or something along those lines, where you're helping these funds go out and research and identify potential companies to acquire. And so you're doing M&A work, and like that's basically what you would do as an investment maker, right? And so like that's really, really great experience. It gives your resume a big boost. And also a lot of these internships can be done remotely. So it's very, very flexible. Even if you don't go to school near like a major financial center, you can still do this. You can, and it's easier to manage this along with like your class schedule and your academics and just like doing this during your downtime. So like we really, really like the system that we come up with, and it's worked 100% of the time. Okay. Ali Zane Giovanni says, am I too late right now for applying to summer 2023 internships? No, you're not too late. There's still firms recruiting. But like I said, like the longer it takes you, and the later you wait to start, like the fewer firms are left, the fewer good options there are, the further downstream you're gonna have to go. And also, I don't know if you're an international student or not. If you are and you need sponsorship, not all firms will sponsor. And so if you need sponsorship, you need to have even more urgency than just like regular people. Okay. Like I would say, like usually it's the bulge bracket, elite boutique, and middle market banks that would sponsor visas, and all the elite boutiques and bulge bracket banks are done at this point. Right. And so like it's pretty much the middle market banks that are still left. And even then, not all the middle market banks are still recruiting. Some of them are, and some of them aren't. And the ones that are recruiting, some of them will sponsor, some of them won't. And so like, you know, there's like, again, the longer you wait, the fewer options there are. That applies to all of you, regardless of what year you are. And which is why like you always need to have a huge sense of urgency when it comes to investment banking and recruiting, because you do not want to be left scraping the bottom of the barrel. Okay. Let me come over to YouTube real quick just to answer like a couple questions here. And also there's a question on LinkedIn. So on YouTube, Ricky Huang asks, what are some things such as deal EBITDA from our previous internship do we have to memorize? So like if you have a deal experience on your resume, you should like know like what is the deal, what are the specifics of the deal, what were the deal terms, how much was paid for it, how did they pay for it, was it cash, debt, equity, what was the premium paid, what was the strategic rationale for the deal, why did these companies do the deal, was it and then like does the strategic rationale make sense to you, right? Do you think this was a good deal? You have an opinion on whether like this deal made sense or not. Also from like a number standpoint, you want to know like the companies that are involved, you want to know their like headline numbers, right? Like what was their revenue, what was their EBITDA, what was their profit margins, net income, bottom line, EPS. You want to know like what was their growth rate, how quickly was their revenue growing, what was their margin profile. And so like those are some like operating statistics. And you want to know their valuation statistics too, like what was the multiple that they were trading at, right? And how what were the multiples that their peers were trading at, and like how do they stack up relative to their peers? And do they have a premium multiple? Do they have a discounted multiple? If so, like why do they deserve the premium or the discount? And so there's a lot of things that they can ask you. Like it's just depending on how in depth the interviewer wants to get, right? And then, like last but not least, like definitely have an opinion yourself on whether the deal made sense or not, whether it was a good deal, and whether you know if you were the decision maker, would you have done the deal, right? And so like those are the types of things that they're going to want to know. Okay. Muzamil Jawed asks, how do I prepare for private credit type interviews? I mean, so private credit is like not something that we typically specialize in or focus on too much, but like I would just say like a lot of the interview prep is going to be like very similar to your investment banking prep. Like you're still going to need to know your behavioral answers. You're still going to need to know accounting, valuation. You probably don't need to know as much about like M&A. You might need to know about LBO still, because if you're investing in credit, like sometimes like you're investing in the debt that's being used in the LBO. But there's a lot of materials out there on like you're gonna want to know your debt technicals like the back of your hand, right? And so there's a lot of resources for that. You know, which you can look up. Okay, I would look up like some debt primers online. There's also there's like Leffin. I forgot the name off the top of my head. There's like a Leffin handbook or a textbook or something like that. Like we have it in our library for our clients, but like I just don't remember the name off the top of my head right now. Okay. On LinkedIn, Mason asks, what's AMA? AMA stands for Ask Me Anything, Mason. So like whatever you want to know, like, you know, just feel free to ask. Okay. Marcos says, how do I get into Goldman Sachs, bro? Yeah, man. I mean, like that's the question that everyone wants to know the answer to, right? But to be honest, like getting into Goldman Sachs is no different than getting into any other investment bank. Like, sure, the bar is probably higher. They're pickier. They have a lot of like the best candidates that are applying. And so like the degree of difficulty is higher, but like in terms of what you need and like how to prep for it, like it's the same four things that I already talked about. It's your resume, it's your networking, it's your behaviorals, and your technicals, right? And so like, just to avoid sounding repetitive, like I don't want to just like keep saying the same things that I've already talked about. But if you've been on this call this whole time, you should already know the answer to that question. If you haven't been on this call and you joined late, there will be a recording of this call later on, both on our YouTube channel and I think maybe on my LinkedIn page as well. I'm not sure if LinkedIn saves the recordings as well, but you can definitely go to our YouTube channel, just search up Wall Street Mastermind and you'll find it. And the recording will be on there. You can go back and watch like the earlier part of this where I talked about all the things that you need to do to not just get a job in Goldman Sachs, but just like any investment banks in general. Okay. Let me come back to Instagram real quick. And by the way, guys, like we have probably like just a little bit more time, maybe another 10 minutes or so. So if you have more questions, feel free to drop them down in the queue right now. And again, I'm going to try to get to all of them. Okay. NYC Legend asks, hi, I'm a freshman in college and was wondering what is the best way to land an internship this year? I'm a finance major, by the way. Yeah. So like if you want to land an internship this year, like what I would not do is just like go on LinkedIn or go on Glassdoor or go on Indeed and like all the major job sites and like, submit a bunch of applications to the internships that you find on there. Like, sure, you can absolutely do that too as well. But like, that shouldn't be the only thing you do, because more likely than not, you're not going to have a lot of luck doing that, especially as a freshman. You don't have a strong resume yet. Those job postings that you're getting, a lot of like sophomores, juniors, seniors, people that have better resumes than you, like everyone has access to those jobs, right? So like if that's what you're going for, like your chances just aren't going to be as good. And like the candidate pool is a lot bigger, like usually hundreds, if not thousands of applications for each job posting, right? And so like what you really need to do in the beginning as a freshman is like, you're going to have to network your way into these jobs. You're going to have to like go out and like network with a lot of firms, talk to people that you're interested in, be ready for a lot of rejections, but like that's part of the process. And what I always tell our students is like every no gets you one step closer to a yes. Right. And so like, you're gonna have to network with people and convince them to take you on as an intern, convince them to give you an opportunity, even though you don't have any relevant experience, or like barely any relevant experience. Right. And so like, that's what you kind of have to do in the beginning. And again, like, if you're interested, like, if you want to work with us, like we can probably, teach you like a lot more in depth on how to do this specifically step by step, because we don't have time on this call right now to go through all of that. But like using our system, like you should be able to find a highly relevant internship in just like 1 or 2 weeks. It's like if you start stacking your resume with relevant internships your freshman year, and most of your competition is not even doing that or thinking about doing that until sophomore year or junior year, like you're going to be way ahead of the curve, right? You're going to have like a way stronger resume than your competition. Like by the time they start getting internships, like your resume is already like super, super, super qualified, right? And so like, that's like a huge competitive advantage, right? So if you're interested in that, again, like for those of you that want to work with us, again, like we're by application only. We can't work with everyone. We don't have time to work with everyone. Like there's more people that want to work with us than we can actually help. And so like it is by application only. You do have to apply. But before you even apply, you can actually like speak to one of the alumni, which is just like an upperclassman who has already gone through our program and successfully gotten a job. We're offering free virtual coffee chats for you to network with these upperclassmen who are already in banking. And you can basically get on a call, ask them for like whatever you want, like recruiting advice, how they got their jobs, just whatever you want to know about the recruiting process. And they'll give you a lot of useful tips. And then you can also ask them about like their experience in our program too, if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to. And then like, if after that, like everything sounds good and you're still interested in working with us, then they can set you up for an application call with our team. But like, if you're not interested in, like, there's no need to apply, right? Then you just take whatever recruiting advice you got from the upperclassmen, you go out, go do whatever you need to do on your own. And that's totally fine too. Okay. So like, if that's something that you think would be helpful for you and it's on the house, completely free. If you're interested in that, go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. Again, it's www.wallstreetmastermind, streets abbreviated. So wallstmastermind.com/apply. Okay. Now, let me go to the next question. Abhishek Murley asks, thoughts on equity research jobs with incoming recession? I mean, I don't think equity research personally is like that affected by recessions, in my opinion, because like equity research is like, you guys cover companies. And so like companies are going to need equity research coverage no matter what. Right. And so it's not like equity research is not like one of those jobs that's like where M&A activity or IPO activity, like deal activity is like really affected by like how the economy is doing and how the stock market is doing. I was like, that's a bit more correlated to whether we have a recession or not. But like with equity research, like I don't think it's going to be as affected. But like honestly, guys, I think like no matter what, like what industry you're going for, what division, inside of finance, outside of finance, investment banking, not investment banking, doesn't matter. Like if there is a recession, everybody's going to be impacted. Okay. And so like what I always tell people is like, you got to focus on the things that you can't control. Control the things that you can't control, right? Like nobody can control whether we go into recession or not. Unless like your name is Jerome Powell and you control the Fed, like, and you can raise or lower interest rates, like there's nothing you can do. If there is a recession coming, it's going to come. You can't stop it, right? What you can do is focus on how good of a candidate you are, right? Can you actually, like, if you are one of the best candidates out there, I'm telling you right now, like investment banks have to hire people every single year, no matter what. They're going to hire new interns every single year. Even if there's a recession, they still need new blood. Like they're going to hire, but they're just going to hire less. So like before, let's say in a normal year, if the bar was here and you're like this good of a candidate, then like you made the cut, right? And that's great. But like now, let's say there's a recession and so they're hiring less people. And so now they raise the bar and now the bar is here and you're still only this good. Now all of a sudden you don't make the cut, right? And so like whether there's a recession or not, it really only impacts like the fringe candidates that like were barely making the cut originally. But like, let's say if you are really, really good and you're like up here and we had a recession and now the bar moves from here up to here, well, you're still up here. It doesn't really affect you, right? So that's why, like, I mean, inside of our program, like, we don't really hear students talking about recessions that much. Like, everybody's just like head down, working, making sure they're the best candidate they can possibly be. And like, they know that most of them know that they're going to be like the top candidates that are up here anyway. So they're not worried about what's going on down here, right? So hopefully that makes sense and like just give you a bit motivation and inspiration to like just really focus on the things that you can control. Okay. Ishan Uni asked, how does your program work? Where can I sign up? How much does it cost? So like in terms of the program, like at a high level, what I can say is like, basically you'll get assigned to both myself as well as like at least 2 other coaches. So like for every student that comes in, we assign 3 coaches just to help you. And all 3 of us are people that have worked formerly in investment banking or some of them currently in investment banking as well as private equity. And then like you have direct line access to us 24/7. Anytime you have a question, you literally just like text message us. And like we'll help you with whatever you need. That's like at a high level, right? But like we will help you with every single thing you need to be prepared for investment banking recruiting, from like all 4 areas that we talked about earlier, like from building up your resume, teaching you how to network, to like helping you craft your behavioral answers, to like teaching you all the technicals. And so it's just like all inclusive and like it's personalized. Like we can customize it based on whatever you need. And so like if you want to sign up, again, it's by application only. You do have to apply. We can't work with everybody. We also want to make sure it's a good fit, which is why like we do screen every single person that comes in the program. Like you can't just like sign up by like paying us and like now you're in the program. Like it doesn't work like that. Like we don't want to work with you unless we are absolutely sure that we can get you the offer and we can get you the outcome you're looking for. Okay. And so like, as for your last question about how much does it cost, like it depends, right? Like because everything's so personalized, like it depends on like 1, how much help you need, and 2, 1, what you need help with, and 2, how much help you need. And based on that, like, so we need to learn a little bit more about your situation first and like what you think you need help with and how much help you need. And then based on that, we'll determine, can we actually help you? And if we think we can help you, we can give you a more precise quote. And if we can't help you, we'll tell you we can't help you because like, we actually offer like a money back guarantee. And like, we can't offer that to everyone. Like we don't want to offer that to people that we know we can't help and then like do a bunch of work with you and have to refund you at the end. Like that just means that we're going to lose money. Right. And so it doesn't make sense for us to do that as a business. So like, if we can't help you, we'll be very honest and tell you that we actually can't help you. But if we can't help you, then we'll tell you and we'll invite you into the program. And at that point, you can decide whether you want to accept the invitation or not. Okay. So there's like no obligation. The first step is to talk to us. So like, again, you can go book that virtual coffee chat with one of our program alums at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. Again, it's www.wallstmastermind.com/apply. Okay. I think there's like 1 or 2 more questions. So I'm going to cover this and then we're just about out of time. All right. So, Shamshir Singrana says, since I'm a recent college grad, but have experience in the insurance industry, how can I get into IB since internships require you to be in college? Yeah, if you already graduated, like you can't be going for internships. You just have to like go for full-time lateral opportunities, right? So you have to like lateral for like an experienced higher position. Now there's a lot more that goes into that. I covered a lot of this earlier. I'm not sure when you joined. So like if you missed what I said earlier, like again, go watch the recording on our YouTube channel. But like depending on like whether you are an international student or not, if you need visa sponsorship, what kind of work experience you already have. It sounds like you're working in insurance, which like probably isn't like the most relevant thing, but I don't know. We'll have to know more details. There's a lot more that goes into like if it's possible for you to pivot and also like how you can pivot if it is possible. So like I would go back to watch the recording and then like if you still have questions, like just feel free to reach out to our team. We're happy to talk to you about it. Okay. NYC Legend says, I appreciate the help. Thank you so much. I'm definitely looking forward to working with you guys. Yeah, man, likewise. Just reach out to us, schedule that call with one of our alums, talk to them, see if it's a good fit first. And if it is, like I said, they can help you schedule a follow-up call with our team. All right. Last question here. I'm gonna come over to YouTube before we wrap it up. So Sean Maldonado says, is a master's of finance looked down upon in banking? If not, what are programs that people usually use to get into banking, masters in school? So masters in finance, I would say is looked down to, but like it's very common in Europe and people are very used to it. But like here in the US, it's not as common for people to have masters in finance. So like bankers just aren't as familiar with it. Not that they look down upon it, right? And so like typically like, I mean, if you can get in as an undergrad, it's always best to get in as an undergrad. But if you can't get in as an undergrad and you need like a more runway and you need to extend your graduation, maybe because you're an international student and all the banks that actually like sponsor are done hiring already, or maybe it's because maybe it's like you just started late and you just didn't know. And so if you need to extend your runway, then a master's in finance could be a good option because it pushes your graduation date back effectively, and then it gives you more time to prep, and it gives you more time to like become eligible again for summer internship recruiting. Okay, so like that's how I would use master's in finance. And in terms of like programs that people usually use to get into banking, I mean, there's a lot. Like if you can even just Google like top master's in finance programs for investment banking, and I think there's like a article from like eFinancial Careers where they like listed like 30 of the top programs for banking. But like aside from that, like also depending on how long you need to push it back for, like sometimes a lot of master's in finance programs is just 1 year, in which case like it doesn't actually do that much if you only extend graduation by 1 year, because like right now, if you're graduating summer 2023, for example, and you extend to graduate in summer 2024, it's still too late for you to recruit for summer 2023 internships, most likely, right? So like a lot of times you want to extend by at least 1.5 or 2 years. And so we've actually compiled a separate list of master's in finance programs that are longer, that are 1.5 or 2 years, so that exactly for this situation, so that you can actually like pick the right programs and extend long enough. So like if you're interested, or if you need that list, like we actually just created it, so it's not like posted anywhere yet. But if you're interested in that list, reach out to us. You can message me on LinkedIn or message us on Instagram, and let us know what you're looking for, and then we can get that over to you. Okay. So with that said, I think like that was the last question that I see in the queue. So anyway, guys, again, just to reiterate, especially for those of you that joined late, if any of you thought this was useful and you want more of this, you want to get this multiple times a week, you want to have like 3 separate investment bankers who have all been on the interview teams at Bulge Bracket and Elite Boutique Banks and have all worked in private equity, or currently work in private equity and currently work in banking, and you want to have 3 of these people assigned to you personally, helping you every step of the way throughout the recruiting process, nowhere else are you going to get something like this. Okay. So if that's what you want, so that you can have a huge competitive advantage, have a huge leg up on your competition for summer 2024 recruiting, or even if it's for any other year, reach out to us, schedule a free free virtual coffee chat with one of our successful alums. Go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. It's wallstmastermind.com/apply, and talk to our alums, see if it's a good fit. If you like what you hear, then they can set you up for a further follow-up call with our team, where you can then officially, formally apply to work with us. Okay. And again, it's by application only. We are the only company out there to offer a money-back guarantee, meaning if you work with us, you do all the work we ask you to do, and you still don't get into investment banking, we'll refund every last cent of your investment so that you lose nothing. Okay. So literally you got nothing to lose. This is all upside, no downside. Go to www.wallstmastermind.com/apply. and we look forward to helping you. All right. Anyway, that'll be it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you found this to be helpful, and we'll be back again around this time next month, first Tuesday of every month, and we'll do this again for you. And until then, hopefully we get to talk to you, but if not, take care, good luck, and we'll talk to you soon. All right.